This is a Flying Cow production.
Book 1, Water. Book 2, Earth. Book 3, Fire. Long ago, Nickelodeon introduced a series called Avatar: The Last Airbender. It combined great anime-style animation, strong storytelling, heart, and humor. It was great, and everyone that saw it loved it. Until one day, a terrible movie came out which everyone hated. But my co-host Lauren Collins knows none of this because he's never seen the show. And that's why we are watching every episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I believe this could be Lauren's new favorite show. Or at least top 20.
Well, hello and welcome back to Comets and Cabbages, the Avatar: The Last Airbender podcast. I am your host, the Flying Cow, Clay Johnson, and I'm just here to do a little community service.
Well, my name's Amanda Van Heil, and I'd like to try some of that Avatar Day food boiled in oil.
And I'm Lauren, and I want to see more cold cases explored and solved in the Avatar universe.
All right. Well, that's right. We are here today talking about another episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Still in season 2, book 2. Still very early on in our travels in Earth. But before we get into that, I did want to kind of talk a little bit before we get started. I asked you guys before we got on mic, you guys still haven't been able to watch any more of the new live action series. But I did want to mention, based on just, nothing has been confirmed yet about season 2, but there have been a lot of reports that the writers have already gotten together to start working on scripts for the second season, which, number one, is it's hopeful for anyone who's been a fan of the live action, but it's also, I'm just saying, if they want this thing to come out before Aang is 20, then they need to get a move on greenlighting this thing, because I think the turnaround for this is at least 2 to 3 years before we get a season 2 when it gets greenlit. But I will say, in the last one, we talked a lot about, there were things that I liked, things that I didn't, but I never really kind of landed. Never really said anything definitive. I will say, ultimately, I think I do like the series, and I am interested in it enough to see a season 2 come out of it. Mostly because, especially based on what they did with season 1, I want to see what they'll do with season 2. It's not like a Shyamalan thing where I'm like, oh, please just put it out of its misery. We don't need whatever that version of the second one is. But this one, I'm interested. Now, I know you guys haven't seen all of the show, or in Amanda's case, any of it. But just based on what you have seen, what you have heard, what do you guys think about the idea of pushing on for a season 2?
I'm just curious how they're going to incorporate Azula's storyline, because she, we're used to her being introduced in season 2, and now she's here with Ty Lee and May.
Yeah, I will say, obviously she's already been introduced, and you haven't seen the series yet, so we, don't want to say a whole lot about it, but they've kind of brought in a different perspective, a slightly different path for Azula. It's going to be very similar, but different. So I think, they've set up a path for her to follow. So they're going to follow that path. I think narratively, it will very much echo the path in book 2, but just with some of the changes that they have already set up for in this first season.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with them seeding stuff earlier. Like I don't. Maybe I'll see later why it's a problem introducing Azula earlier, but just
sure.
No, one of the things I've heard already said just in someone's review was just that the first season of the live action show does more of exploring like the Fire Nation culture. And exploring those people. It's like, no, I that sounds interesting. That sounds like something honestly the first season of the animated show didn't do much with. And
sure, I mean, it definitely is going to, anytime you make a remake or revisit, you are automatically given the opportunity to flesh out things that weren't fleshed out in the original, because the original was the original. They didn't know the things that were going to be popular, that all the fans were going to be wanting to know, whereas the remake knows what the fans are interested in and what they want to know. I will say, though, sometimes the remakes are like, let's explain this thing that nobody's expressed any interest in, and it's like, why? We weren't interested in that. But at least from what I have seen, the majority of things that they did explain, I was interested in. Not to say that there weren't, some things that I'm like, why would you do that? But yeah, for the most part. But yeah, again, with me being the only one that's watched it, there's only so far we can take this conversation, but that's fine because we have an episode to talk about. We are talking about episode 5 of the second season. It is called Avatar Day, and it was directed by Lauren McMullen and written by John O'Brien, and it debuted April 28th, 2006. And I will say, I think that this is one of the perfect episodes for Amanda and I to do a little, segment that we like to do on here, that I have, I guess, unofficially been dubbing Lauren, love it or hate it. So, Amanda, this is definitely one of the more humorous episodes, and we have seen that those can be kind of, a little divisive for Lauren. Sometimes he loves them, sometimes he absolutely hates them, and sometimes it is the exact opposite of what we expect it to be. But Amanda,
yes, huh? I like to be unpredictable.
There you go. But Amanda, based on this episode and what you know of Lauren's sense of humor, do you think that he was closer to loving this episode or hating it?
I think with Lauren's legal background and enjoying Sokka taking the lead on things, I'm going to say Lauren loved it, or is closer to loved it than hated it.
Sure. I ever the devil's advocate, I am going to side on the fact, I think that there were probably things in this episode that he did appreciate, but I think overall it wasn't really his bag as far as humor goes. So I'm going to say he hated it. All right. So Lauren, we have both weighed in.
I'm starting to wonder if you're doing this intentionally, just take both sides, so one of you will be right.
I mean, I will say, honestly, I usually don't change whatever opinion I had going in. It just so happens that Amanda usually leans on the side of, oh, he loved it. And I usually think that you hated it.
You hated it. Well, in this case, Amanda is pretty close to right. I rather enjoyed this episode.
All right.
In the minutes before we started recording, I pulled up and watched it a bit, and yeah, there are specific little jokes that, especially towards the beginning, that don't quite work for me. Sure. That are really child. Like there's one of the townspeople who like fakes a fart. Like in reaction.
I don't even remember that.
I mean, I thought that was funny, but I also like a good fart joke.
Yeah, it's like, here's what we think of the Avatar, and he turns around.
Oh, okay, that one. Okay, yeah.
Okay, I legit laughed.
Now I know what you're talking about.
I love fart jokes.
It's not a bad fart joke necessarily, but it's just like, yeah, I could have done without
that.
Honest.
Especially because he turns around and shakes his butt while he does
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but by and large, yes, Amanda did kind of nail this right. Like I loved. I do enjoy Sokka being the serious, studious person playing basically Sherlock Holmes in this episode, trying to solve a mystery.
Gotcha.
We finally get to see Sokka with what I now know is a pipe from the sequence from this podcast. To be honest, up until this episode, I always wondered why you use that as like the illustration of just like humor. Because like it appeared to be Sokka to me playing like a musical instrument. I didn't know why that was the illustration of humor. And then like
because music is so funny.
Because it's so funny. But I mean those like bubbles or whatever out of it. It's like, okay, now I get why that's the illustration. But yeah, watching Sokka go through the evidence, try to sort out the crime. And so somewhat exploring the mythology of the world in here. Yeah, like I said, not all the jokes landed for me, but by and large, I rather enjoyed this episode, and it was especially after we discussed the swamp, a massive step up from the swamp.
Sure. All right. Well, I have to say then that I am pleasantly surprised, but I am surprised because when we reviewed the episode The Great Divide, you obviously were not a fan of that one. I believe that is still your lowest rated episode. Sure.
Isn't that one of the more disdained episodes of the entire series?
That is the thing. It was apparently there was a poll that went around where basically the fans ranked their most favorite to least favorite episodes, and The Great Divide was the bottom of the worst episodes. This episode was just one step above it.
Really?
Aww.
Yes. Which, honestly, when I saw that, it shocked the crap out of me.
Yeah, especially
because I have always loved this episode.
I have too.
It's like, did they forget about last week's episode of this show?
Again, I mean, obviously, it might be because we have the foreknowledge, but both Amanda and I really enjoyed that episode.
Oh yes, I know you.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but so I kind of expected you to kind of feel similarly, because to be honest, even though I love this episode, I can fully understand why someone would not like it, because there is an utter silliness to it.
I mean, it's very much a filler episode.
It's very much a filler episode. It really doesn't, like, there's no way that they cover this in any sort of detail in a live action adaptation.
It'd be really funny if they did.
There might be a reference, but that's the most that I would expect out of this episode.
No, it is something you can easily cut from, it's part of a 20 episode season. It filled out an episode somewhere. It doesn't really matter.
Right. But still, if I was making a list of episodes that you could skip or keep, I would tell people to keep this episode, because even though it's not consequential, I mean, you could argue the Iroh Zuko storyline, which we'll talk about, but this for the most part, it's not consequential, but it's so much fun for me.
It is fun, and also this speaks to a bigger issue that you see in streaming shows, and especially with streaming shows, because they're shorter seasons and they have to like trim out the fat of filler episodes, obviously being a negative way to put it, but just sort of one-off episodes. Is that you look at other shows, especially genre shows from the past, where you had to have those episodes, that they weren't deep in the mythology during a season, fill out a season. And oftentimes those are, in the past shows, some of the most memorable, best episodes of the show. I mean, like
they can be. They can also be some of the worst episodes.
No, they can be. It is kind of a crapshoot for how they turn out. But like when you're talking about adapting into a shorter season, like Star Trek Deep Space Nine, for instance, like what is usually claimed to be the best episode of that show has
nothing to do with
Yeah,
No,
it's
true.
completely.
I mean, honestly, it's barely Star Trek.
We're thinking of different episodes, but because you're thinking of Far Beyond the Stars, I imagine,
which, in my opinion, is the best. I mean, if you're thinking of the Cisco psychiatrist episode, I think that's the second best.
No, I'm not thinking of the Cisco psychiatrist. I'm thinking of the one that centers Jake. And has time travel. With Tony.
That one's okay. You think that's the best of the show?
No, I mean, honestly, I enjoy Far Beyond the Stars more.
Yeah,
but yeah, that is basically just someone gets hit in the head and like fantasizes a different episode. Yeah. But The Visitor, which is one where Cisco disappears and then we see like Jake advancing decades into the future. Like I do enjoy that episode, but it is widely considered one of the best episodes of that show. But regardless, my point being, both of these episodes, like, sure, you can cut them out of the and
I was gonna say both of the episodes that we're talking about fit the metaphor. They're not what you would. They don't further the main plot of DS9, which of all Star Trek shows definitely has a driving plot.
It was a heavily serialized show.
Yeah,
but like and honestly, the X-Files is one of the best examples of this. Is because the X-Files had a mythology. All the best episodes of X-Files are the non-mythology episodes.
Sure,
they're the standalone monster of the week. So yeah, it doesn't bother me that this episode like doesn't further the Aang gang's like adventure to get him to master the second element of his bending. Like it was just a solid little adventure. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right. Well, then let us go ahead and let us get into talking about this episode. Like I said, it starts off well. It actually starts off with this very weird moment of Momo watching Sokka sleep because a spider has formed a web over Sokka's mouth. Which, I mean, I will say, if nothing else, this kind of sets up what this episode is, because it's like, why did you do that? Why was that necessary? But at the same time, it's like, that's interesting. So utterly unnecessary, but at the same time, it's like, okay,
you're gonna set the tone right
Momo
now.
eats mouth spiders. I'm sorry, what did you say, Amanda?
I'm just saying, it's like, we're gonna set the tone right now.
Yes, because it basically, that whole thing culminates with Momo sticking his hand in Sokka's mouth, waking him up, and then eating the spider.
Because Momo is that good of a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like, I'll eat your mouth spiders. I will wake you up to do it, but I will eat your mouth spiders. I mean, how many friends do you have that you could say that about?
Yeah, I don't know anybody that would eat my mouth spiders.
No more than 3.
Okay. Yeah, those are the good ones right there. Yeah. But yeah, so honestly, it was a good thing that Sokka was woken up, because they are then ambushed by a group that we will come to know as the Rough Rhino Riders, which are kind of a group of, these guys that ride things that look like a mix between a rhino and a lizard. There we go. Looks kind of like a mix between a rhino and a lizard, and they ride these things around, and we will actually see these guys pop up in a few different episodes. But at this point, I don't know that they really know that this is the Avatar and his crew, but they're definitely, after, I guess just people that they could turn in for the Fire Nation. And they are able to escape them, but in their escape, they do lose Sokka's boomerang. I will say, though, I don't feel much sympathy for Sokka, because when they first get on Momo, yes, they're all going to ride Momo now.
Momo. Wow.
Appa is getting a break. They're all riding Momo now. Not sure how that works, but it is. But no, as they start to get on Appa, both Katara and Aang realize that they have left stuff, staff, Katara's scrolls, things like that. And so they go and they get their stuff, but it's not until they start to leave that Sokka's like, my boomerang. What? We can't go back for my boomerang? I'm like, Sokka, what the hell were you doing while they were retrieving their stuff? No sympathy. Just none.
And also, I'm not sure it ever occurred to me that Sokka had one boomerang and not like multiple.
Just lots of boomerangs.
Like he can only go buy a new boomerang, but you can't always get a new scroll and a new staff.
Exactly.
I was about to say, yeah, Aang's, staff is, at this point, it is an ancient artifact.
Exactly.
That staff.
Two of these have unique items. His boomerang is relatively fungible here.
It is specifically from the Water Tribe. And I will say, to your point of thinking that he had multiples, he's specifically got a boomerang case that is shaped like the boomerang.
Yeah.
So, I don't know where he'd be carrying the extras. But
I would he should have had a case that held more than one boomerang. It's like it's a weapon you literally
maybe that was his special boomerang and he just has a few backups.
It's a weapon you literally throw away from you. But
it's a boomerang. It's supposed to always come back. That's how it works.
It should, so long as the bad guy doesn't catch one, or it doesn't stick in someone.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then he goes and beats that person up and gets it back.
Yeah. It's like he's an archer that has one arrow. But it's very multiple here. At least have even Captain Boomerang with the Suicide Squad, I'm pretty sure at least always had two. Just one, not a holster.
Just in case.
He had multiple across his chest. That was the way he always wore the boomerang.
So basically what we're saying is, Sokka, we have zero sympathy. Yeah. You should have carried multiples. You should have been paying attention while the others were getting their shit. No sympathy for the loss of the boomerang.
If he's going to be this protective of this one, I'm also going to just have to assume it's carved out of whale bone or something like that.
It's definitely in the Water Tribe colors. So it's definitely unique to the Water Tribe.
Oh no, it should. Yes, but he could presumably he made it. It's not like they go to the store in the Water Tribe and buy stuff.
It was made by Water Tribe artisans,
but he would know how to do it again. But if he doesn't have the materials, if he can't, if he doesn't have access to whale bones, then it's hard to reproduce one. But should have had more than one. That's Sokka's lesson here.
But yeah, I will say that does kind of start a runner for Sokka throughout this episode, basically trying to get more stuff to basically reinforce his identity. He goes through a couple of different options throughout the episode, but when they escape, they come upon a town and realize that it is Avatar Day, and they're like, oh cool, yeah, let's hang out and let's join the festivities. I will say, we do notice that Aang is wearing his hat. Honestly, it's smart because a lot of the Earth Kingdom is, under Fire Nation control. But again, Aang's disguises are never great because literally all he's got on is a hat. If anybody knows what he looks like aside from just the hat, they should know that it's him. Although I will say that does not bear fruit because in just a second, they bring out a couple of giant three giant statues of the Avatar. There's one of Kyoshi, there's one of Roku, and there is one of Aang. And Aang looks exactly like he does now, except without the hat. Yet no one notices that this kid's the Avatar.
He's in costume.
I guess that maybe they assume he's cosplaying, which would make sense, except for the very next beat is that they're setting all of these things on fire.
Yeah.
Because apparently, even though it's called Avatar Day, it's because we hate the Avatar.
Damn.
They should really call it We Hate the Avatar Day. But yeah.
It was a minor little point made last season that like Aang's image kind of became well known. Like it became popularly known that the Avatar is back. It's this kid. His face shows up on posters. People know who he was. So presumably, I have to imagine this is the first Avatar Day they've had with an Aang effigy.
I would assume. Yeah.
So they and since only I think a matter of weeks have passed in this show,
they built that fast.
They really put in some effort making a giant Aang effigy.
I mean, you would assume that probably the other two were already built in prep for it. So yeah, I mean,
they burn them like. Well, I mean, they would have already built it, but still.
Yeah, I was about to say they have because they burned them. They have to build.
They have to make a new one every year.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah.
Also, it occurs to me too. It's like this kind of stuff we have to forgive for a kids' cartoon, but for all the issues about Aang not wearing a hat, not disguising himself, it's like he's wearing the traditional garb of the air nomads, and he's the only one running around this entire land, and they clearly know what air nomads wore because they have a giant 40-foot tall effigy wearing it.
Yet again, nobody recognizes, and at the very least, nobody's like, why are you dressed as an air nomad? We hate the Avatar.
He's cosplaying for Avatar Day. That's what he's doing. Yes.
Is he going to then bludgeon himself as part of the festivities? Like, what's the game plan here?
It's like the Feast of Fools or something like that. Like in Hunchback, his idea is like he's going to be the target of everyone's ire. They're just like ultimate tomatoes or something.
I guess. Jeez. I mean, I would be worried if that were the case, though. I'd be worried about that kid. It's like, dude, don't dress as the Avatar. Like, really, go get some psychiatric counseling. Like, you don't need to do this to yourself. But yeah, so it is revealed that this town despises the Avatar. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, they start burning this stuff, but other than just them, vocalizing that they don't like the Avatar, these people aren't doing anything wrong. They're not hurting anybody. So I don't really know why Aang and the gang don't just eat their snacks and leave. But Katara, because everything is important to Katara, decides to defend these, giant statues that they are burning and, puts them out and then, tries to defend the Avatar, in which case Aang then reveals himself and is like, that's right. Because the guy's like, well, we don't like the Avatar because he, disgraced us. He basically, doomed us or whatever. And Aang's like, what are you talking about? I will say though, during this bit, they're talking about the fact that the reason that they hate the Avatar is because that Avatar Kyoshi killed their leader, Chin the Great, as they call him. Here's a nice little image of Chin the Great. And that basically that kind of messed up their society going forward. So they hate the Avatar because, Kyoshi killed Chin the Great. And during this speech, one of the villagers speaks up and he goes, yeah, before that happened, we were great. Now look at us. And of course, it's this weird looking villager who's got like hair coming out of his ears. And he's just, he definitely sticks out.
He kind of looks like Boomy's cousin.
Sure. A little bit, maybe a bit shorter, I would argue. I honestly, given what is revealed later about Chin the Great, I think this might be a descendant of Chin the Great. But what I think is really funny about that guy, and honestly, what I really appreciate about it, is that throughout the episode, they go back to like see the crowd, and that guy's there. Even though he's not always saying something. I think he has like one more line later, but most of the time he's just silent, but he's still there. In a lot of cartoons, they would bring up a guy for a joke like that, and then you'd never see him again.
That's a nice visual continuity. I do like that.
But yeah, I like the fact that this guy is always in the crowd. Number one, because you couldn't miss him. But I just like the fact that he's always there. He's definitely an important part of the town because I truly believe that he's the great grandson of Chin the Great. He's the most pissed off of all of them. But yeah, but like I say, Aang basically decides that no, we're going to clear my good name, and so the leader of the village is like, well, the only way to do that is to put you on trial. And I don't have the name of the leader of the village. Do you guys have that by any chance?
James Hong.
I was about to say he's voiced by the great James Hong, but I
Mayor
do
Tong.
not. We'll just call him Hong.
It's Mayor
okay?
Tong.
Mayor Tong. Oh, okay. Pretty close. But yeah, so Mayor Tong played by the great James Hong, who's honestly great in this part. He's so much fun as this mayor. But
as a one-off thing here, just as we were talking about the live action show earlier. Remember, George Takei was given like this throwaway bit, like as a Fire Nation general or something in season 1 of Avatar. I haven't watched the episode. I'm not going to spoil who they cast him as. They gave George Takei such a better role in the live action adaptation of Avatar.
Oh, I know who he was cast as.
Okay, yeah. That is a much better way to deploy someone of his level of fame and stature and the use of his voice.
Sure. I will say though, because I've seen it, you barely recognize his voice. Part of it is that George Takei sounds older now.
Sure.
So his voice doesn't sound the same anymore. But also they add so many effects on it that you can barely tell.
Yeah.
But still, I mean,
it's still good to have him with a more important character and to have that character have someone with some import behind their name.
Right. But yeah, so we've got James Hong here playing this mayor and basically tells Aang, okay, if you want to defend yourself, then we're gonna have to put you on trial. So Aang basically is like, okay, so he they're like, and that goes with everything, so you're gonna have to pay bail. Well, apparently all they have is Water Tribe money, and they won't take Water Tribe money, even though the guy right before that took Water Tribe money. But I mean, obviously they're going to take every opportunity that they can to push down the Avatar because they don't like it. Who knows? On another day, they might have taken Water Tribe money, but not from the Avatar. Not today. But yeah, so Katara and Sokka basically are now in charge of building a case for Aang. And so they, decide to, go to look for clues. But before that, basically, he's having a conversation with Sokka. Sokka's just like, why are you doing this? Basically, saying everything that I said before. We could have just left. We didn't need to do this. This isn't really that important. It's one village. Let's just go. Just break out of there and let's go.
Well, Katara had to Katara it up.
Yep. She's in true Katara form, and Aang is in true, selfless, self-flagellating Avatar.
And he's of course going to follow anything Katara does.
It's true. But he's able to convince Sokka to help him because he's like, I thought you might want to play a detective. And Sokka's like, sure, but I'm going to need some props. So Sokka gets some detective props, which is, I mean, I will say, I don't even know what to make of this hat. I mean, I do feel like it is based on like some sort of real life hat from some culture.
My gut feeling was they're trying to sort of exoticize the deerstalker hat. Instead of having like the flaps come down, they're having
them because they are sideways, and then he's got this weird like bill on the top of his hat.
Yeah.
That so far as I can tell, serves no purpose.
Yeah, like it almost looks like a captain's hat.
Yeah, it's weird. It's odd looking. And then of course it has a monocle that extends. I get that. You know, detective. I get that.
No, it all feels like they want to do Sherlock Holmes type stuff, but like they can't have him look like actually use Sherlock Holmes stuff.
Right.
So he gets a hat that kind of evokes a deerstalker, but not really.
But also kind of has an Eastern Asian influence.
No, and that would be the important thing you want to do in an adaptation. Yeah,
you
give something that's like gives the hint of a deerstalker, but like that looks more Asian.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they don't want to give him a magnifying glass. They give him like this flip down monocle thing. They don't want to give him like the traditional like Sherlock Holmes pipe. They give him this sort of Asian dragon pipe. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And, you know, so Sokka's first idea, his first order of business is we need to go to Kyoshi Island. And yes, I know that is where Kyoshi is from and all that kind of good stuff. But, you know, in the back of his mind, he's like, I'm going to see Suki again.
Yep.
You know, that is like, you know, a good 70% of why he said, let's go to Kyoshi Island. But yeah,
for a minute in this episode when they said like, let's go to Kyoshi Island. And like, maybe this had been set up earlier and I missed it, but just like, how far are they traveling like this afternoon? I
will say based on what we see later, they can't be that far from Kyoshi Island, which honestly does beg the question, how far have they traveled? Because this is only the 5th episode. How far have they traveled in the last, you know, 3 episodes?
Yeah.
I mean, well, they did go all the way back to Omashu,
yeah,
which was pretty close to Kyoshi Island. So
I mean,
it does make sense.
Were they in consecutive episodes back in first season? Omashu and Kyoshi?
I think so.
They were like episode 3 and 4 and 5 or something like that.
Yeah, 3 and 4, I think.
3 and 4. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Later in the episode, exactly when we get the explanation of what happened in the past, it makes sense that they're close together.
Sure,
but until we, you know, they're probably within eyesight of each other, quite frankly.
But I mean, honestly, even in the episode, it makes it seem like it's a further distance than we later realize that it is.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, so you know, they go to Kyoshi Island and you know they learn a lot of stuff about Kyoshi because well, first of all, you know, obviously Sokka does ask, so where's Suki? And the mayor's just like, well, Suki and the rest of the Kyoshi warriors decided to leave us all defenseless, and they went to go help other people because I guess we weren't important. That's obviously not how he says it, but I'm just like, so who's defending the island now?
No, it's the standard superhero explanation of why is there not a team up in this scenario. It's like, oh, because the Justice League is off in space. So please don't ask why Superman's not helping.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it is kind of a nice thing because the mayor is just like, well, you know, you guys really inspired Suki, so she really wants to help out, you know, Earth Kingdom refugees and things like that. And of course, Sokka's just like, you know, he's disappointed, understandably. But something that I missed is that, you know, we did see before they left, they saw the scene of the crime. Which this crime apparently happened 370 years ago. How there are things like footsteps still intact is mind-boggling to me. But one of the first things that Sokka realizes is that, you know, the story was that that Kyoshi came out of the shrine and killed you know, Chin from there, but the shrine and the statue that was you know, according to them built to honor Chin after he died were made of the same stone, so they were obviously made around the same time. So that doesn't match up. So that's when they decide to go to Kyoshi Island, and that's when they discover that Avatar Kyoshi has the largest feet of any avatar. And I love how the mayor says that because he's so proud of that fact. He's just like, oh, yes, rather large feet, the largest of any avatar. I'm just like, all right.
I'm just imagining like every new avatar, they measure the feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They just have a little chart.
Are your feet bigger than Kyoshi's? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So someone just goes to the avatar version of like WikiFeet and just like double checks like the measurement for all.
Yeah. But why that is important is because the footprint that they have where that they believe was Kyoshi's, where she killed Chin, is tiny. So obviously they've got some facts mixed up.
Yeah.
So there
is some Avatar obsessive in the Avatar universe who is just informed, like, wait, there's something foot relevant related to the Avatar. This is my time to shine. I have a spreadsheet on this. Like, let me tell you Kyoshi's shoe size.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I will say, when they show those shoes,
they are quite large.
Honestly, Kyoshi herself seems to be a rather tall person. Like,
we saw a representation of her early in this episode. She's like 40 feet tall. She's a big woman.
Well, I mean, that was like a statue. It
may have been life size. We don't know that.
We get a flashback later, and she does seem to be around anywhere from 6 to 8 feet.
Yes,
but she is. Yeah, she's rather large.
Yes, she's.
So they decide to, they bring this evidence back. And meanwhile, Aang has been making friends in prison. They console him about the fact that hasn't been able to make any inroads with Katara. And they're like, don't worry, it'll happen if it's meant to be, that kind of thing. I'm just like, okay, it's weird. But they bring the evidence back to Aang, and they mention to the mayor, they're like, we're ready for the trial. We've got a lot of, great evidence. There's no way that you're going to be able to convict Aang. And this is the point at which they discover that is not the way things work here.
Evidence? That's not how our court system works.
Then how can I prove my innocence?
Simple. I say what happened, and then you say what happened, and then I decide who's right. That's why we call it justice, because it's just us.
And I gotta say, I think I like this episode simply for that moment. That I know it's such like a dad joke, the justice, because it's just us. But between the simplicity of it and James Hong's absolutely knocking it out of the park delivery, and also just, we are seeing how not only stacked the odds are against Aang, but also just how backwards these people are.
I mean, chances are those prisoners that are in there with Aang probably aren't bad guys either.
Yeah, I mean, they're just tattoo enthusiasts.
They're probably like, you look scary, you're going to jail.
Right. Yeah. Because it's just them, not bald snake people. But yeah, so it really kind of sets up this town is another one of those, Aunt Wu towns that basically they believe what they want to believe, and, no matter how much, strong evidence is given to them, they're going to choose what they want to believe, even if it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Which can be frustrating.
Speaking of little jokes that almost throw away, but just which landed for you, I really like visual gag. I think it comes later where up till this point, Aang's been arrested. He's in the stocks. His head and his arms are in the stocks. And at one point, he just pulls right out of it.
I mean, honestly, when it's on, you can tell there's a lot of room there.
The stocks aren't built for a 12-year-old.
Tiny. No.
Like,
yeah.
So yeah, when he just doesn't feel like being in it, he just isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, the fact that he's in the stocks in a prison cell is a little overkill anyway.
But he's just been Cubering up till this point. Just like, yeah,
100%. 100%. But yeah, they do have the trial, and the mayor says what he thinks happened. Aang has a hard time remembering the facts. And so basically, to kind of try to help, Katara decides that they're going to call a star witness. They're going to call Avatar Kyoshi. And I love the way Avatar Kyoshi begins her evidence, because she just gives the whole game away. Yep. And just is like, I killed Chin the Conqueror. No, I defended my people. No, he killed himself with his own stupidity. Nothing. She's just like, nope, it was me. And
good for her.
But here's the thing, when you later see the story played out, because basically what we discover is that he was a tyrant and was basically trying to take over the entire Earth Kingdom. And so she, before he could conquer her home, she just separated the land. And instead of running like everybody else, he refused to move. And the Earth gave way. It never shows that she caused it to happen, but it just gave way beneath his feet, and he fell to his death because he's a dumbass. But she didn't say that.
Maybe she just really wanted to claim it.
Honestly, she probably really wanted to kill him and was not upset that he died. But obviously, this doesn't do Aang any favors. And so, you do wonder, how much of the story the village actually knows, but just Kyoshi saying that she killed, Chin the Conqueror is enough for them to convict him, and they sentence him after spinning a wheel to be boiled in oil. But wouldn't you know it, Aang is saved by the Rough Rhino Riders. Because they come in and attack the village, and basically the mayor is like, help us. Yeah, and he's like, yeah, we don't need to do the whole boil and oil thing. Just, community service, you're good. And so Aang does, he dispatches them, and then they decide to change Avatar Day to basically now be to honor Aang for the day that he saved their lives. And they've now changed the official food to now raw dough to remind them all of the day that he was not boiled in oil. And I love at the end where Sokka just says, "This is the worst town we've ever been to." I think he'd be hard pressed to find a worse one. Yeah, pretty.
Seems to be somewhere in the Fire Nation, but no. It's just this town of weirdos.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they've really only been to one Fire Nation, controlled town, but except for the fact that they ran away from it, it was actually a pretty cool town.
And at least they're open about everything. The Earth Kingdom is just like, whatever we want to do.
Yeah. These guys were just, assholes that, basically stood in their way at every opportunity. And then when they finally did like them, fed them raw dough.
This is good news for them, too, because now that they're probably not going to need to burn their effigies, they don't need to rebuild those giant 40-foot statues every single year.
I mean, they might still build one for Aang. It might not be that big, but they might still do something for Aang.
I mean, now that granted, they wouldn't have to store them somewhere all year. And I guess just having them sit outside of town, just like these kids.
Although, meeting everybody in that town and then other Earth Nation towns kind of is like, okay, I kind of get why the Fire Nation wanted to take over. Like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. But was there? Oh, I mean, I did forget to mention there is a side plot with Iroh and Zuko. Basically, we saw in the last episode how Zuko has, put the blue spirit back together, and I kind of hinted at it. He has thoroughly become a bandit, and he is stealing things from people, food and then money from a rich guy. And, eventually Iroh is just like, hey, you know what? I get, why you're doing this and everything. I get that you're upset and, but this might not be the thing to do. This might not be the way to go. And Zuko basically responds by saying, you know what, Uncle, you're right. I don't think we need to travel together anymore. And he leaves.
But at least he takes the stolen horse.
Well, Iroh gives him the horse.
Because Iroh's like, don't leave this stolen
I was
thing
about to
with
say,
me.
Iroh's just like, you know what? I want no part of this. So
I told you not
take
to
the
in the
things you
first
stole,
place. But if you're going to go be an outlaw, here you go.
Yep. But yeah, Zuko leaves, and that is all we see of that storyline. But is there anything else in this episode that you guys wanted to talk about?
Not really.
No. All right. Well, then let us go ahead and let us move into our segments, starting with our My Cabbages moment.
My cabbages!
Which is, of course, the part of the episode where we discuss our favorite or most interesting scenes of the episode. So, we will start with Amanda. Amanda, what was your My Cabbages moment?
It's a really simple moment. It's a really silly moment. But when all of a sudden Sokka is just holding the pipe. And then Katara's like, where did you get the pipe?
I forgot.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. Like when he's holding it, I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
I forgot that was the tag to that bit, but yes, that's a good addition to that joke.
Yeah. All right, Lauren.
I mean, generally Sokka's investigation, but again, if I have to pinpoint a single moment, I really love the Roger Rabbit bit with the stocks.
Sure.
Only if it's funny.
Yeah. And frankly, it says something about Aang's character that just like he was willing to humor these folks and just like pretend to be detained for all this time until the moment he just didn't feel like it anymore.
Yeah, if nothing else, this episode proved, that Aang really wants to serve all people, even the ones that are backward, that really don't deserve his protection. He still, he's everyone's avatar, even the Fire Nation. So yeah, it definitely reveals a little something about his character. For me, I mean, I've already said it. The justice moment.
Part's so funny.
That's why we call it justice, because it's just us. Yeah, just great stuff. All right. So now it is time for the Mako Award. This is, of course, the award that we give to our favorite or most interesting character for the episode. Lauren, who gets your Mako Award?
I always love it when he plays this role. I said it before, Detective Sokka. Getting to see him try to deduce stuff, and again, kind of, working his way through to a proper deduction there.
Yeah.
And both him and Katara, to some extent, also then being very frustrated with Aang during his trial, being unable to like follow simple instructions like this is what he needs to do. Try to save your own hide and your neck, and you're not doing it. That kind of disagreement between characters when I appreciate. So yeah, Detective Sokka.
All right. Amanda.
Gotta go with Mayor Tong because it's James Hong.
Agreed.
I love this opening to him. He's so funny.
Yeah, I'm also giving this to James Hong, not just because he's James Hong, because I mean, honestly, that would be enough. But also, like, this is the type of character that I love to see James Hong play.
I mean, he ate it up. It was great.
It's basically the same character he played in Mulan with Chifu. But, you know, I just love that kind of sniveling, you know, guy who's in charge, who is like the last guy you'd actually want to be in charge because he's a horrible human being. But at the same time, because it's James Hong, it's utterly entertaining. So yeah, absolutely. Just absolutely brilliant performance.
Like I was saying earlier, season 1 of Avatar kind of wasted, in my opinion, George Takei on a fairly incidental role. Like, this is a much better deployment of James Hong.
Agreed.
At the same time, I would kind of hope that like he would recur in future Avatar roles. I'd like he's still too good of a name of an actor as like an Asian American actor to just like still give him a one-off character in this show. But if he only gets the one-off, I don't know. He still had a good showcase in this.
It was a great one-off.
Yeah,
it was a great one-off. All right. Well, then it is time to rate the show based on the Avatar State Meter. This is, of course, where we rate the show. We can give it anywhere from 1 to 5, 5 being the show at full power. 1 could deal it a fatal blow. So, Amanda, what would you rate this episode?
That's hard. I think just because of the episodes that I know that I really love, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It's a great episode. I think it's hilarious. It's just not my absolute favorite, and that's not calling it bad. That's just, it's not my absolute favorite. And there are some that are really close to my absolute favorites that I'm saving the 4s for.
Sure. All right. Yep. Lauren?
I think I'm going to give it a 4. Yes, liked a lot in this episode. Not all, like I said, not all of the jokes land for me. One thing I haven't specifically griped about earlier is, as much as I enjoy the mystery and the efforts to solve it, I don't actually, and the procedure of it kind of all works for me. The actual facts and pieces of evidence they discover, I don't entirely think hold together all that strongly. Like for instance, you mentioned earlier, they find the stone. It's like, aha, this is the same stone. Obviously, it was cut at the same time. That is a completely ridiculous assumption.
I'm like, that's a large temple and that's a large statue.
Yeah.
They might have been, it might be from the same stone, but who's to say that that didn't take place over years?
I mean, this is a pre-industrial society. It probably came from the same quarry. It almost absolutely came from the same quarry.
Yeah.
That's no reason to think they cut the stone at the same time.
Yeah, like the statue stone was probably left over from the shrine stone. And they're like, what do we do with this extra stone?
Exactly. I mean, this is the way, more ancient societies work with. They had stone to work with. They kept making stuff out of it for long periods of time.
Yeah.
But
I will say, ultimately, I think both of those pieces of evidence were just to prove, hey, your story is not as infallible as you think it is.
Yeah.
Because these things that you're saying, we already have disproven.
Yeah.
So,
and like you said earlier, the fact that the footprint is still there 300 years later is weird.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would get, like, if they maybe had encased it in glass or something. Yeah. But no, it's still just on the side of a cliff.
Yeah, if it was left in something that would have solidified, hypothetically, I don't know, long or something like that. But but no, it's just in dirt, and apparently it didn't wear away in 300.
Nope.
Nonetheless, those are quibbles. The actual bones of the episode I thought were stronger than that. So yeah, I leave it with a 4.
Awesome. I am also going to give this a 4. I will say I think there are probably stronger episodes, but of the humorous episodes, this is one of my favorites. It's definitely one that sticks with me, which is why when I saw that this was like rated the second lowest, I'm just like,
that is really
surprising. Are you guys not fans of comedy?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Do you guys not like James Hong? Do you guys not like talented actors? What's the issue?
Yeah, for the record, I think I'm going to go ahead and move my rating up to 4. I'm having to think of how many episodes that I like better. And I'm going, you know what? Those I'm putting at 4.5.
There you go.
The scale goes to 5.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. 3.5 felt awfully low.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have yet to, well, no, you've given out of 5.
I gave 1 5 for Secret
You have
Tunnel.
given 1 5. Yeah. But none of the rest of us have. So, yeah, still a lot of room to grow here. But yes, that is the episode. Fun episode. One of my favorite comedic episodes. Yeah, good stuff. All right. But we have one last segment. Very important question that we're all on the edge of our seats to find out. And that is this. Lauren, is this your new favorite show?
I mean, I mentioned last week after the swamp.
Yeah.
No, it is not. But this is obviously an improvement over the previous episode.
Absolutely.
It's gotten back into my good graces here.
Sure.
To be perfectly honest, it's not even the favorite show I'm going through right now. Because I am currently working my way through FX's The Americans, which
okay.
I'm really enjoying that.
I haven't seen, but I've heard mostly good things.
I've always heard good things, and it's a lot of episodes to get through, but obviously very, very different from this show.
Yeah.
Just
a little.
Yes. A lot less bending. Than but if the Soviets had mastered bending, that would probably be a twist in like season 3 or 4 of that. So it would have been a big turn in the Cold War. If the Soviets had managed to master firebending. Because I would assume that would possibly apply to like nuclear energy. I don't know if this is a thing that's coming in future.
We are nuke bending.
Yeah. The Fire Nation can just set off a nuclear bomb and just sort of firebend its way over the Earth Nation.
Scary.
Nuclear winter. Yeah. I don't know where that entire bit.
I don't either. But I was going along the right on.
I was going. I just have an end point for it. Is the problem?
It's fine. It's fine. But I do want to go ahead and let people know how they can get into contact with us. Of course, you can contact me at the Flying Cow Pod on Twitter and Instagram. You can also email at theflyingcow@gmail.com. Make sure to check out all of the shows and everything else we've got going on. Make sure to check out patreon.com/theflyingcow. Lots of fun, entertaining stuff. Lauren, Amanda, go ahead and let the people know what you got going on.
You can find me on socials at Amanda Van Heil. You can also find me on Twitch at Panda Princessa and on Zelda Universe TV on YouTube. Also, if you are going to be in the Boston area the weekend of the 21st through the 24th, I am hosting 2 panels at PAX East.
Fun.
You can find me on Twitter at Lauren Collins. And if you're going to be in the Atlanta area, sometime between March 15th and March 30th, specifically the Sandy Springs area, I will be on stage in Act 3 production of Lend Me a Tenor. Very, very funny farce.
Fun. Good stuff. All right. Well, we will be back next time discussing the episode Zuko Alone. Wonder what that's about. But like I said, we will be back for that. But until that time, moo.